I nearly died of giving birth and my daughter was left a fool. My husband despised my mother and me, forced me out of our home and married my best friend, Kay Sawyer. When I had nowhere to turn, Neil Fraser, my devoted suitor, married me with $1 million dowry, promising to protect my mother and me. But when the doctor said my daughter was in critical condition, I overheard Neil's cold, impatient voice. I made her stupid on purpose. It's better if she dies. She doesn't deserve happiness. The doctor pleaded with him to show mercy, but he sneered viciously. For Kay's happiness, what's wrong with getting rid of a fool? The lives of that mother and daughter mean nothing to me. The truth struck like a bolt of lightning, and tears streamed down my face. I knew at that moment I had to take my daughter away from this monster. Chapter 1. I nearly died of giving birth and my daughter was left a fool. My husband despised my mother and me, forced me out of our home, and married my best friend, Kay Sawyer. When I had nowhere to turn, Neil Fraser, my devoted suitor, married me with $1 million dowry, promising to protect my mother and me. But when the doctor said my daughter was in critical condition, I overheard Neil's cold, impatient voice. I made her stupid on purpose. It's better if she dies. She doesn't deserve happiness. The doctor pleaded with him to show mercy, but he sneered viciously. For K's happiness, what's wrong with getting rid of a fool? The lives of that mother and daughter mean nothing to me. The truth struck like a bolt of lightning, and tears streamed down my face. I knew at that moment I had to take my daughter away from this monster. Clinging to the half-open door of the clinic, I clenched my fists. My mind was blank except for one horrifying realization: my childbirth wasn't difficult at all. My daughter's suffering was Neil and the doctor's doing. Then, my daughter's attending physician's words echoed in my ears. Mr. Fraser, do you plan to keep the baby in your wife's belly? Neil let out a scornful laugh, his voice dripping with disgust. Who knows how many men that bitch has slept with? It's impossible to tell if the bastard in her belly is even mine. I've been secretly adding contraceptives to her medicine. A woman like her isn't worthy of carrying my child. Instinctively, I covered my belly, where a tiny life was growing. To him, it was nothing but a disgrace. Then, a realization hit me. I had switched to new vitamins recently. No wonder contraception had failed. I had been married for years without a child, and every test came back normal. It was never me. It was him. He orchestrated everything. The doctor hesitated before speaking again. Mr. Fraser, your wife loves you deeply, and the child is innocent. Please reconsider. Enough. Neil slammed the table, cutting him off. Only someone pure and beautiful like Kay deserves to bear my child. I only married Linda Owen to keep her in check and to stop her from disturbing K's life. If she dares to cause trouble, I won't forgive her. The room spun. My world darkened. A nightmare from 5 years ago came rushing back, suffocating me. Back then, I had been eagerly waiting for my child's arrival, filled with hope. Then, Kay sent me a picture, one of her and my ex-husband, Jack McDaniel, tangled in bed. She taunted me cruelly. You've always looked down on me. This time I won. My world shattered. Overcome with grief and rage, I collapsed in pain, barely making it to the hospital before getting into a car accident. I thought my life was over, but Neil saved me. He stayed by my side during my darkest days. After my daughter was born, she suffered brain damage from lack of oxygen. I was consumed by guilt and pain. Neil had always been so gentle with Stacy. I believed it was kindness, a blessing in my darkest times. For years, he stayed by her side, feeding, dressing, and playing with her. He held her close when she was sick and crying, whispering soft words to soothe her. But now, I know the horrifying truth. It was all a lie, a trap he had meticulously woven. The doctor hesitated as if he wanted to say more, but Neil's cold, ruthless gaze silenced him. You'd better keep this to yourself, he warned. If Linda finds out, you won't be able to handle the consequences. Hiding in the shadows, my entire body trembled. I stumbled back to my daughter's ward. On the hospital bed, Stacy lay pale and weak, her breathing faint. Even in her fragile state, she was still whispering, "Dad." Chapter 2. I swallowed my sorrow and immediately reached out to a doctor friend, desperate for even a sliver of hope for my daughter. Just then, the door to the ward swung open and Neil stepped inside. His sharp eyes flicked to my phone screen, and he asked suspiciously, "What are you looking at?" Still worried about Stacy's condition. My heart clenched. I quickly locked my phone and forced a calm smile. "I'm planning a birthday surprise for you in a few days." The corners of his lips lifted as he kissed my cheek, his voice gentle. "Linda, it's really great to have you." I sneered inwardly. His acting was impeccable. He walked over to Stacy's bed, stroking her face as he murmured, "Don't worry. Leave Stacy to my medical team. She'll recover for sure." My emotions spiraled out of control, and before I could stop myself, I snapped, "No, I won't entrust my daughter to anyone." The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Neil's expression darkened. "Linda, don't you trust me?" Our eyes met, and I felt like I had plunged into an icy abyss. His seemingly gentle gaze hid chilling cruelty. Just then, his assistant hurried in and whispered something in his ear. Though they spoke softly, I caught 3 distinct words: K. Moments later, I saw Kay rushing toward him, tears streaming down her face. Clutching Neil's arm, she pleaded, "Neil, Iris is in severe heart failure. The doctor said only Stacy is a match. Please save Iris." Neil's expression twisted in frustration. "Where the hell is that bastard Jack?" he growled before nodding. "Don't worry, I'll make sure Stacy donates her heart to Iris." A triumphant glint flashed in K's eyes, but she choked back a sob, whispering, "Neil, you're so kind. I knew you wouldn't abandon us." Hearing this, my blood ran cold. He made my daughter stupid, and now he wanted to take her heart. Suddenly, frantic cries echoed from the ward. My stomach lurched and I bolted inside. Stacy was curled up in a corner, terror filling her wide eyes. Iris clutched her chest dramatically, shrieking, "This idiot tried to hurt me." She bumped into me on purpose and threw my medicine away. As she spoke, she stomped on the shattered pill bottle, crushing the medicine into dust. Stacy shook her head frantically, tears streaming down her face. "No, I didn't. I really didn't." Neil stormed forward, his face livid, as he bellowed, "Iris's health is already fragile and you're bullying her. Apologize now." Stacy looked up at him, her tiny body trembling. "Dad, I didn't do anything," she sobbed desperately. "Stop making excuses." Neil snapped, his patience gone. "If you want to apologize, don't expect me to care for you. I have no use for a stupid daughter." Stacy, who had always relied on Neil the most, crumbled. With a broken cry, she clung to his legs, begging, "Dad, I was wrong. I'll apologize. I'll kowtow to her if you want." She crawled toward Iris, her small body trembling, and slammed her forehead against the floor. Watching my daughter being wronged and humiliated like this sent pure rage coursing through my veins. I rushed forward, shielding Stacy as I yelled, "It was Iris who bullied her. Stop blaming Stacy." K's hand flew across my face in a stinging slap. "Shut up. How dare you slander Iris? She's sick. She'd never bully anyone," she screeched. Iris smirked, seizing the chance to sneer. "You worthless bitch. You gave birth to a stupid daughter and now you want to leech off us. You're just jealous that I'm better than her." As she spat those words, she shoved me hard. I crashed to the ground, a sharp pain tearing through my abdomen. A warm, sickening liquid seeped from my lower body. My mind went blank in horror. Chapter 3. A chilling realization gripped me. I might be losing my baby. "Help me, it hurts." I whimpered, my voice barely whispered as my vision blurred. Neil cast me a cold, indifferent glance before turning his full attention to Kay. "Kay, is your hand okay? Did you hurt yourself when you slapped her just now?" Then, with an impatient scowl, he barked at me, "Stop acting. Get up already and quit embarrassing yourself." At that moment, something inside me shattered. I finally understood this was how little I meant to him. This was how little my daughter meant to him. The people around us watched with detached amusement, whispering among themselves, their words laced With malice, she gave birth to a stupid child, and still dares to flaunt her. What a disgrace. Just look at her acting all pitiful. No wonder her child turned out like that. It must be hereditary. Iris let out a mocking laugh. Ha ha, wetting your pants at this age? Just like a fool. How pathetic. A nurse hesitated, stepping forward to help me, but Neil cut her off sharply. Don't bother with her. She's just putting on a show for sympathy. I've seen plenty of women like this. Just then, my daughter erupted. You're not my father, she screamed, her voice shaking with fury. I won't let you bully my mother. Neil recoiled in disgust and quickly pulled Kay and Iris behind him, shielding them as if we were some sort of disease. Kay smirked and tossed a parting jab. A fool is a fool, still causing trouble, even when she's about to die. As soon as they left, my daughter lost all control. She lashed out, flailing against the people around her, her cries piercing the air. Don't bully my mom. Ignoring the stabbing pain in my abdomen, I struggled to reach her. Stacy, stop, please. A wave of dizziness crashed over me and the world went black. When I woke up, I was met with the news that I had already braced myself for I had lost the baby. Oddly, I felt nothing. Calmly, I took the necessary steps. I erased our records and booked a flight. Now, I just had to wait for the right moment to escape. Then Neil walked in, feigning concern. Linda, how are you? I've been so worried, he said, sighing dramatically. I'm heartbroken too, losing the baby was hard on me. But before I could respond, his tone hardened. Kay is still upset. You need to come with me to the banquet and apologize to her. I knew exactly what that meant. Another opportunity for Kay to humiliate me. I remembered all too well how, at a previous event, Kay stood before me in a dazzling gown, dripping in jewelry, and sneered. Just look at you and then look at me. The difference is laughable. Another time at the mall, she spotted Stacy in her simple clothes and made a point to announce, "This child looks so shabby. Does her mother have no sense of style?" And Neil, he had always responded with the same indifferent words, "Just ignore her. Don't let it get to you." Back then, I thought he was protecting me. Now, I know better. He wasn't shielding me, he was shielding K's happiness. For the sake of my plan, I swallowed my anger and nodded. The banquet buzzed with energy, but I felt nothing. Neil strode onto the stage, raising his hand for silence, his face alight with a warmth I had never seen before. With a beaming smile, he declared, "Tonight we celebrate the birthday of my beloved goddaughter, Iris. I have prepared something special for her." A beautifully wrapped box was brought forward. Inside lay a set of luxury car keys, villa property deeds and shares in Fraser Corporation. Iris, draped in an elegant princess gown, accepted the gifts as an extravagant custom cake was rolled onto the stage. Applause erupted, praise filling the air. Nearby, two noblewomen whispered, their voices were just loud enough for me to hear. "Mr. Fraser truly spoils Iris. I've lost count of how many lavish gifts he's given her over the years." Indeed. And that poor adopted girl, he doesn't care about her at all. I wouldn't be surprised if he's just waiting for her to disappear. Their words sliced through me like a blade. But this time, I felt no pain, only the steely resolve to leave this place for good. Chapter 4. I stood in the corner, my heart heavy with sorrow. Every year, Stacy had nothing more than a plain, old-fashioned cake for her birthday. Neil would always say she needed to remember the bitterness to appreciate the sweetness. She once asked for a beautiful dress, but Neil scoffed, saying she could never compare. Meanwhile, every year on Iris's birthday, a lavish party was thrown in her honor. The pile of gifts was stacked up like a small mountain, overflowing with extravagance. Neil always justified it, saying Iris was weak and needed support for her future marriage, but for the daughter of a mistress. Why? I had fought with him over it before, but the argument went nowhere. I now realized he must have continued showering her with gifts in secret. I was the only one left in the dark. As I stood there, beads of cold sweat formed on my forehead from the pain in my lower abdomen. Just then, Kay sauntered over twisting her waist as she walked, with Iris by her side. Her lips curved into a fake smile, but her eyes gleamed with provocation. In her hands, she held an urn. Loudly, she sneered, "This is for your daughter who died early. You might be needing one yourself soon." The room instantly fell silent. All eyes turned toward us. I clenched my teeth, my voice shaking with fury. "Kay, you've gone too far." Kay smirked, covering her mouth with fake innocence. "Oh, come on, I was just joking. Why are you taking it so seriously?" Neil's face darkened. He immediately stepped in front of Kay and snapped at me. "Haven't you made enough trouble?" Kay didn't mean any harm. I bit my lip, swallowing my rage and humiliation. Neil let out an impatient sigh. "Enough of this nonsense. Today is Iris's special day." Forcing down my fury, I plastered a smile on my face, took the urn from Kay and said calmly, "Kay, you really do love to joke." Then, without hesitation, I tossed it back at her feet and smiled coldly. "But I think your daughter with a heart condition might need it more." I turned to leave, but before I could take a step, a sudden force slammed into me from behind. Iris shoved me. Like a vicious little demon, she sent me sprawling into the freezing water of the nearby pool. I gasped, the shock of the cold seizing my body. Laughter erupted around me. "Ha ha ha. Look at her, she looks just like a drowned dog. Oh God, she probably peed herself out of fear. How disgusting." Iris's shrill laughter rang the loudest. My body, still weak from the miscarriage, trembled violently. As I struggled, the water around me darkened, tainted red with my own blood. Summoning every ounce of strength, I fought my way to the surface, glaring at Iris with all the fury I had left. "Iris, you're trying to kill me. You won't get away with this." Neil yanked me out of the water, but instead of concern, he barely spared me a glance before speaking in a cold, detached voice. "Don't make a scene over a child's mischief." A fresh wave of rage surged through me. "A child?" I trembled, my voice rising. "She's a monster. And you are you my husband or Iris's real father?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd as people exchanged questioning looks. Neil's face twisted in anger. Without warning, he struck me hard across the face. "You and your jealousy need to know their limits. Get out of my sight and go be with your idiot daughter." Stunned, I clutched my stinging cheek. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Humiliated, I turned and walked away. That night, Neil came home, reeking of alcohol. He staggered into the room and froze when he saw the suitcase at my feet. For a moment, his dazed expression held something unreadable. Then, a mocking smirk curled at the corner of his lips. "Running away from home? How childish. Enough of this drama." As he spoke, he suddenly reached out, grabbing my arm and dragging me toward the bed. I thrashed against him, shouting, "Neil, let go of me." But he was too strong. His grip tightened as he pressed me down, his breath hot and heavy with liquor, his voice slurred, thick with desire. "Stop pretending. Isn't this what you want? A man to love you?" His hold became suffocating. "If you don't behave," he murmured darkly, "I'll make sure you regret it." His eyes burned with something primal, his hands relentless. I knew then this wasn't love. It never had been. My arm was gripped so tightly it ached, but I swallowed my nausea, forced a smile, and said softly, "Neil, your birthday is coming up in a few days. I've prepared a special gift for you." Neil paused, his smug expression turning even more self-satisfied. "How coincidental," he smirked. "I've also prepared a surprise for you." I already knew what his so-called surprise was. He planned to give my daughter's heart to Iris. So I decided to play along. In the days that followed, Neil pretended to be a loving husband and father. He occasionally brought home small gifts, whispered sweet nothings, and acted like a doting man. But I saw through his deception instantly. Kay, on the other hand, continued to provoke me as usual, sneering, "Linda, do you really think you're worthy of stealing Neil from me? Just wait, you'll be thrown out like trash." I clenched my teeth in silent rage, but forced myself to remain indifferent. I no longer wanted anything to do with that scumbag. Finally, Neil's birthday arrived. Everything was in place. Without a word, I left quietly with Stacy. At the hospital, just outside the operating room, the doctor glanced over the medical records and nodded. Prepare for surgery. Push the patient in. Nurses wheeled the gurney forward, slowly guiding Iris toward the operating room. Then suddenly, a nurse came rushing in, panic written all over her pale face. Her voice trembled as she stammered, "And no, something terrible has happened. Miss Fraser and Miss Stacy are gone." Chapter 5. Her words detonated like a bomb, shattering the tense silence. The doctor's expression shifted instantly and the medical files slipped from his grasp. Neil stiffened, his face darkened, his entire presence turning ice cold. With a sudden movement he lunged forward, grabbing the nurse's collar, roaring, "What did you just say? Say it again." The nurse trembled violently, struggling to get the words out. "Miss Fraser and Miss Stacy, we can't find them anywhere." With a furious shove, Neil threw her aside, his hands shaking as he fumbled to his phone. His voice thundered through the hall, "Find them. Search everywhere. If you don't, you'll regret it for the rest of your lives." Chaos erupted. Nurses scrambled in every direction, frantically shouting my name, and my daughter's scouring every corner of the hospital. The doctor furrowed his brow, turning to Neil with a sharp gaze. "Mr. Fraser, did your wife know that you plan to use Miss Stacy's heart to save Iris? Is that why she—" Neil flinched violently, his face twisting with panic. The secret was out. Kay came rushing in, clutching Neil's arm, her face streaked with tears. "Neil, what's going on? Iris is still waiting for surgery. You have to do something." Neil was reeling, his mind in turmoil, but he forced himself to stay composed. "Don't worry," he said stiffly. "I've already sent people to search. Iris will be fine." But he avoided looking at her in the eyes. Inside, he cursed bitterly. "Linda, what the hell are you doing? If you vanish now, what will happen to Iris's surgery?" Moments later, a subordinate rushed over. "Mr. Fraser," he reported, his voice tense, "we've searched everywhere. Madam and Miss Stacy are nowhere to be found and their identity records have been erased." Neil's world spun. His mind buzzed, his body swaying unsteadily, his teeth clenched in frustration, impatience boiling inside him. Damn it, everything is ruined. No one can find them. If Iris can't have her surgery, how am I supposed to explain this to Kay? Then, his phone vibrated wildly in his hands. Snapping out of his daze, he quickly checked the screen. For a split second, relief flickered in his eyes. He thought it was a message from me. But when he saw the sender, his expression froze, his entire face twisted. The screen was flooded with breaking news. K's scandal was everywhere. Disgust flared in his eyes as he violently yanked his arm from K's grip. His voice dripped with contempt. "Kay, you're absolutely revolting." Chapter 6. Kay also caught a glimpse of the content on Neil's phone. Her face turned ghostly pale and panic flashed in her eyes. She lunged for Neil's arm, her voice trembling as she pleaded pitifully. "Neil, please, listen to me. It's not what it looks like. I was framed. You have to believe me." But Neil wasn't interested in any of her explanations. Without hesitation, he turned and walked away. K's legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed onto the floor, wailing, "Neil, don't leave. You can't just abandon Iris and me." Neil kept walking, lost in his own thoughts. His mind drifted back to the past. The moment he first met Kay. She had been dazzling that night, wrapped in an elegant dress, flashing a charming smile that had captivated him instantly. For a time, she was the embodiment of gentleness and warmth, making him fall deeply, hopelessly in love. But now, those once sweet memories feel like a cruel joke. Regret gnawed at him. How could I have been deceived for so long? Little did they know this was all my carefully laid plan. That day, by sheer accident, I witnessed Kay in an intimate moment with a strange man inside a car. My instincts screamed at me, so I quietly hired a private investigator to dig deeper. What I discovered shattered everything. Kay and Jack had already separated and were in the middle of a messy divorce. Worse, her personal life was in complete chaos. She had married Jack while already carrying another man's child. Iris wasn't even Jack's biological daughter. Jack, too ashamed to be labeled a fool, had chosen to keep the secret buried. Once I had all the evidence in hand, I waited, and on Neil's birthday I dropped the bombshell. This was the gift I had prepared for him, my final act of revenge. The moment the news broke, it exploded across the internet. Kay, who had built a massive following as an influencer with millions of fans, had always portrayed herself as pure and innocent. Now, the very people who once adored her turned their backs in disgust. Brands she had worked with rushed to release statements cutting all ties with her. In an instant, she went from being a beloved internet personality to a disgrace. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, I walked out of an airport with Stacy by my side. I glanced at my phone one last time, scrolling past the flood of hateful comments aimed at Kay. Then, with a flick of my finger, I turned off the screen, closing that chapter of my life for good. That night, Neil stumbled home, drunk. The moment he flicked on the lights, the eerie silence sobered him up. He walked toward the bedroom, his steps unsteady. The closet door was ajar, revealing empty shelves and missing clothes. Half of Linda and Stacy's belongings were gone. Neil stood frozen, his mind drowning in memories. He could still see Linda's back as she silently packed her suitcase, her posture filled with quiet determination and finality. But back then he had been too impatient, too absorbed in his own desires to notice what she was doing. It hit him now like a knife to the chest. His breath hitched, his fists clenched. What have I done? What kind of monster am I? For 5 years, he had been nothing short of inhuman. Blinded by his foolish love for Kay, he had become obsessed, so much so that he orchestrated a car accident just to get rid of Linda. When she lay injured and helpless, he played the part of the concerned husband, sending her to the hospital with fake kindness. And for Kay's sake, he had even conspired with the doctors, forcing Stacy into a life of suffering, turning an innocent child into nothing more than a broken doll. To him, Linda had never been a person. She had been nothing more than an object, something to use, something to control. Neil's thoughts spiraled further. He recalled one of Iris's past birthdays, how he had searched tirelessly for a rare, limited edition doll, convinced it would bring her joy. He had been so proud, thinking she would be thrilled, but when Iris laid eyes on it, she merely wrinkled her nose in disgust and sneered. Chapter 7. This doll isn't cute at all. Iris's birthday gift next door was way better. With that, Iris tossed the doll aside without a second glance and went back to her video games. Neil stood there, his smile frozen, his heart sinking. The excitement he had felt moments ago crumbled into disappointment. Meanwhile, a different memory surfaced, one he had long buried. One night, Stacy had stayed up late, exhausted, and slumped onto the sofa after a long day. Seeing this, the tiny girl tiptoed into the kitchen and poured a glass of water, her small hands unsteady. A little spilled onto the floor, but she didn't notice. She simply walked over, held the cup out to him, and said in her soft, childish voice, "Dad, drink some water. You won't be tired after this." At that moment, warmth flooded his heart. There had been times, brief, fleeting moments, when Stacy's kindness had touched him, but each time he reminded himself that she was Linda's child, not his. So he stole his heart and forced himself to ignore her. Even though Iris constantly dismissed his efforts, he had always remained devoted to her. The more Neil thought about it, the more guilt clawed at him. His chest tightened. Without thinking, he raised his hand and slapped himself hard across the face. "Neil, how could you be so cruel? So heartless," he muttered, his voice thick with self-loathing. Suddenly, as if waking from a trance, he grabbed his phone and called his assistant. "Take back everything I gave to Kay and Iris," he ordered coldly. "And don't bother with Iris's hospital bills anymore." Not long after, Kay stormed into his house in a frenzy, her face flushed with rage. Her eyes were red, and she shrieked at him. "Neil, what the hell is wrong with you? Why did you take everything back? Iris is still waiting for surgery. How can you abandon her now?" Neil met her glare with icy indifference, no trace of warmth left in His gaze. K, don't ever come looking for me again. K lunged forward, grabbing his collar and shaking him like a madwoman. What do you mean by that? What about Iris's surgery? You have to find that little idiot and use her heart for Iris. Disgust twisted Neil's face as he wrenched her hands away and roared. How dare you even say that? Stacy doesn't owe Iris a damn thing. If anything, it's Iris who owes Linda and my child a life. Or have you forgotten? The day Iris had one of her tantrums, she pushed Linda down the stairs. Linda lost our baby because of her. She's a selfish, vicious brat. She deserves everything that's happening to her. Kay froze, then let out a bitter laugh. And whose fault is that? She sneered. You spoiled her rotten. You made her this way. Neil stared at her, and for the first time, his hatred for her reached its peak. Don't act like you're innocent, he spat. You've been with so many men. You don't even know who Iris's real father is. And you have the audacity to beg me? Kay crumpled to the floor, tears streaming down her face. Neil, please, you promised to take care of us, she sobbed. But Neil's voice was merciless. Get out. I never want to see you again. After slamming the door behind her, Neil staggered into his study. On the desk, a stack of papers caught his eye. His gaze landed on the divorce agreement already signed. Beside it lay a note. Neil, you owe me. Sign it. His hands trembled as he picked up the document. Memories of Linda flooded his mind, snapshots of their time together, laughter, stolen moments of happiness. Now, each memory felt like a dagger plunging into his chest. Panic and desperation flared in his eyes. In a sudden burst of rage, he ripped the agreement to shreds. Linda, I won't let you go. I will find you, he vowed under his breath. Then, he grabbed his phone, his grip tightening as he barked into the receiver. Find Madam and Stacy. I don't care what it takes, just find them. Chapter 8. I had no idea that Neil was desperately trying to track us down. Quietly, I had settled in a peaceful town abroad with Stacy, far from the chaos of our past. Each day, I accompanied Stacy to the rehabilitation center, watching her struggle through therapy with unwavering determination. At night, she sometimes mumbled Dad in her dreams, but she never mentioned him when awake. She understood everything, yet chose to stay silent, perhaps to spare me from pain. One afternoon, as I casually scrolled through videos, my hands froze. A news alert flashed across the screen. Neil Fraser is offering a $1 million bounty for his missing wife and child. Comments flooded in. What a devoted husband. He must love them so much. He even cares for an adopted daughter like she is his own. A perfect man. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. If only they knew the truth. If it weren't for Neil, Stacy wouldn't have been left in this condition. Ever since I discovered that he was behind her brain injury, I had been secretly gathering evidence. Once I had enough, I handed everything over to the police. At the same time, I exposed his twisted plan, the one where he conspired with a doctor to steal Stacy's heart for Iris. When the news broke that Neil and the doctor had been arrested, I clutched my daughter and wept. Baby, I whispered, my voice trembling. Mom finally avenged you. But reality had other plans. One day, while at the rehabilitation center, a sudden notification popped up on my phone. Police drop charges against Neil Fraser. Doctor takes full responsibility. My heart plummeted. I knew exactly what had happened. Neil had used his wealth and influence to escape justice. With his power, taking him down was almost impossible. Yet the rumors had already taken a toll. Fraser Group's stock price plummeted. People no longer believed in his innocence. Online, the backlash was relentless. Neil must pay for what he did. This monster doesn't deserve to live. Protests erupted outside Fraser Group headquarters. Everywhere Neil went, he was met with jeers and disgust. At one event, someone hurled an object at him, shouting, "You heartless bastard. Even children weren't safe from you. Rot in hell." Meanwhile, Kay Ever the opportunist took to live streaming. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded into the camera. My daughter is critically ill. We need money for surgery, but Neil abandoned us. How could he be so cruel? Disgust twisted in my gut as I watched her shameless act. She had relied on Neil all her life. Why would she stop now? But Fraser Group's legal team wasted no time. A public statement was released, accusing Kay of spreading malicious lies, and warning that legal action would be taken against her. Then Neil did something unexpected. He recorded a video. In the dimly lit frame he looked haggard, his eyes swollen from apparent tears. With a choked voice he pleaded, "Linda Stacy, this is all a misunderstanding. I love you both. Please come back. Give me a chance to make things right." Watching his pathetic performance, my stomach churned. Yet his act worked. Some netizens started sympathizing, twisting the narrative into a tragic love story. What if he truly regrets it? Maybe Linda misunderstood him. She ran away and now he's chasing her. It's so romantic. Romantic. I nearly laughed. This was far from a love story. It was a nightmare, and I would never let him trap me in it again. Chapter 9. Despite everything, Neil's tactics to whitewash his image were working. No one believed that he had been the one to ruin Stacy's life. Instead, people dug up old videos and photos, ones of him anxiously pacing hospital hallways, tenderly holding Stacy's hand and looking like the perfect, devoted father. To the world, it was proof of his love. But I knew the truth. It had all been an act, a performance to maintain his pristine reputation. And now the entire internet has become part of his twisted search party. Then, one day, my phone rang. It was my lawyer. His voice was tense, laced with frustration. "He refuses to sign the divorce papers," he sighed. "And he keeps threatening me, demanding to know your whereabouts." I clenched my fists, my anger boiling over. Taking a deep breath, I steadied my voice and said, "File for forced divorce. And don't contact me until it's done." 3 months later, the sun was warm, the breeze gentle. I walked hand in hand with Stacy, heading toward the bakery on the corner. She was humming a little tune, skipping lightly, her laughter crisp and sweet. For the first time in a long while, we felt free. But just as we rounded the corner, a shadow fell over us. I stopped, and when I looked up, my breath hitched. Neil. A wave of painful memories crashed over me like a tidal wave. He was unrecognizable. His once proud figure was thin, his cheeks sunken, his eyes dull, bloodshot eyes filled with exhaustion, regret, and desperation, locked onto mine. Behind me, Stacy shrank back, clutching the hem of my dress in fear. Neil's face darkened at the sight. "Linda Stacy, I finally found you," he rasped, his voice hoarse and trembling. I forced myself to stay calm, my expression ice cold. "What do you want?" I said sharply. "We have nothing to do with you anymore. Leave us alone." His lips quivered. Slowly, he pulled out a document and held it out with both hands, his voice laced with quiet desperation. "This is the inheritance transfer for all my assets. I want Stacy to have everything as compensation." Compensation. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. My anger ignited like dry leaves in a wildfire. "You think this makes up for what you did?" I hissed. "You ruined Stacy's life. No amount of money can fix that. If you really want to compensate her, why don't you experience what it's like to be disabled?" Neil flinched as though I had stabbed him straight in the heart. Then, without warning, thud, he dropped to his knees, and with a loud smack he slapped himself across the face. Then again, and again, hard. Each strike echoed with raw pain, his voice breaking between blows. I was wrong, I deserved to die." I watched, unmoved. Then, without another word, I turned my back on him and walked away with Stacy. But before I could take another step, Neil scrambled forward, pulling something from his bag, a handmade doll. His hands trembled as he shoved it toward Stacy. It was poorly stitched, it seems uneven, but I recognized it instantly. It was the cartoon character Stacy used to love. His voice cracked on the verge of tears. "Stacy, I made this for you. Every time I think about what I did, I make another one. I've made hundreds of them. Please come back with me. Let me take care of you." Fury burned through me. I slapped the doll from his hands. "Don't touch my daughter," I spat. "You're a murderer." "Do you really?" Think making a doll will erase your sins. Then, something unexpected happened. Stacy, who had been silent all this time, suddenly stepped forward, her small hands clenched into fists, her eyes flashing with rare defiance. And for the first time since her illness, her voice rang out clear, strong, and angry. "Go away," she shouted. "Don't hurt my mom." Neil's entire body stiffened, his breath hitched, and in that moment for the first time, he realized he had lost us forever. Chapter 10. Get out. We don't want to see you again, I shouted, my voice filled with fury. Neil's body swayed as if my words had physically struck him. His eyes, once full of desperation, slowly dimmed. With despair, he sank to the ground helpless, his trembling hands gripping his knees as he watched us walk away. But he didn't give up. A few days later, I was stunned to discover that Neil had moved next door. I ignored him completely, but he was relentless, always looking for ways to get close to us. One afternoon, he approached Stacy with a small box of cookies in his hands. His voice was soft, almost pleading. "Stacy, try these. Dad made them for you." I noticed the burns on his hands, raw and red, proof of his struggle to bake them, but I felt nothing. Without hesitation, I snatched the box from his hands and crushed the cookies under my heel. "Don't try to win us over with this fake kindness. We don't need your hypocrisy." Stacy watched from behind me, her small face set with unusual seriousness. Neil opened his mouth to say something, trying to find an opening for sympathy, but before he could, Stacy suddenly spoke. "I will not forgive you, and I will never let you hurt us again." Her voice was clear, firm, a sharp blade slicing through Neil's last thread of hope. He froze. Then, his body crumbled to the ground as sobs racked his frame. I was wrong, I was really wrong. I pulled my daughter inside and slammed the door, shutting out his cries. But Neil refused to disappear. No matter how much I avoided him, he remained a shadow, impossible to shake off. Each time he appeared, he wore the same pitiful, hopeful smile, always holding a gift, always looking for a way in. But in my eyes, no amount of atonement could erase his sins. My daughter and I met his kindness with the same cold rejection. The attack. That day, I took Stacy to the hospital for a checkup. She clutched my hand tightly, her innocent smile brightening my heart. Then, screech. A car skidded violently toward us, its tires screaming against the pavement. My blood turned to ice. I barely had time to react before I locked my eyes with the driver. Kay. Her face was twisted with hatred, her eyes wild and filled with madness. She was screaming, her voice shrill with rage. "You all deserve to die. You ruined everything. Go to hell." The car hurtled straight for us. I couldn't move. Then, a shadow shot out from nowhere. Neil. Without hesitation, he lunged at us, his eyes filled with a terrifying resolve. His arms wrapped around me and Stacy, and shoved us out of the way. Bang! The impact sent him flying. His body crashed against the pavement, a sickening crack echoing in the air. Blood. So much blood. I ran to him, my heart pounding, my breath uneven. His face was deathly pale, his chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. But when he saw me and Stacy, the corner of his mouth curled into a weak smile. "You and Stacy, I'm glad you're safe." Then his eyes fluttered closed. He lost consciousness. The aftermath. Neil was rushed into surgery. I paced outside the operating room, my hands cold, my mind a blur. Hours later, the doctor finally emerged. "His life is no longer in danger," he said, "but he is paralyzed permanently." A strange silence filled me. I should have felt something, but I didn't. This was simply punishment. And even then, it wasn't nearly enough for the pain Stacy and I had endured. As for Kay, she was arrested on the spot. Later, I learned the full truth. Iris had suffered a heart attack and didn't survive. The loss shattered Kay's mind completely. On top of that, Jack had kicked her out of the house and Neil had cut her off entirely. With nowhere to turn, she had blamed me for everything, and in her madness, she had tried to kill me and Stacy. A few days later, I stood outside the hospital room. Neil lay motionless in bed, his once powerful frame now lifeless. For the first time in months, I stepped inside, and as I looked at the man who had once controlled my life, I wondered, had he finally received the punishment he truly deserved? Chapter 11. In the hospital ward, Neil lay weakly on the bed, his face pale and hollow. When he saw me, his dull eyes suddenly brightened as if grasping onto a final shred of hope. "Linda, I knew you would come," he said eagerly, his voice trembling. "I will make it up to you, I swear. I'll spend the rest of my life atoning for my sins." I remained cold, unmoved by his words. My voice was sharp, slicing through his illusion. "I am not here to forgive you." His hopeful expression froze. "I came to tell you that I'm taking my daughter somewhere far away for treatment. Please stop pestering us." The smile on his face vanished. His eyes, once filled with desperate expectation, dimmed with pain. His lips quivered, his voice breaking. "Linda, I regret it. Every single day. I blame myself. I have nightmares. I can't escape them. I know I'm unforgivable, but please give me another chance. I want to make amends." I stared at him, my heart a block of ice. "Make amends?" I scoffed. "Where was this regret when you hurt Stacy? When you destroyed everything? Don't you think it's too late for redemption now?" At that moment, Neil's desperate gaze shifted past me to the doorway. Stacy stood there, clutching the edge of my coat, her small fingers trembling. His voice cracked with emotion. "Stacy, please forgive Dad, okay?" His eyes were pleading, his voice laced with desperation. "I was wrong. I will never let you get hurt again." But Stacy only shrank back. The little girl who once called him Dad with love and admiration now only looked at him with fear. She couldn't even bring herself to say the word anymore. I clenched my fists, my heart aching for my daughter. Then I turned to Neil, my voice cold and final. "Don't taint the word, Dad. You don't deserve it." A strangled sob escaped his lips as he shut his eyes in agony. Tears slipped down his face. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but I didn't stay to listen." I took Stacy's hand and walked away without looking back. The end of the past. After that visit, I made sure Neil could never find us again. We moved. We changed everything. We erased him from our lives. Then, one day, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated. Then, I silenced the call. I thought nothing of it until I received the news. Neil was dead. Suicide. Before he died, he sent me one final message. "Linda, I finally understand the pain of being trapped in a broken body. This is my retribution. I'm sorry. I have committed unforgivable sins. I hope you and Stacy live well, and forget about me, a sinner." I read his words once. Then, I deleted them. In the end, my daughter and I inherited the property he left behind, but more importantly, we started over a new life. A life where the past no longer chained us. A life where we were finally free.